Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. In today's show, did Donald Trump snub Narendra Modi by inviting Xi Jinping to his inauguration and not himself? Well, what does this signal for India-US relations moving forward? Meanwhile, Sikhs remain at the forefront of providing aid, as always, to those in need during the Los Angeles wildfires. Meanwhile, in Punjab, Amritpal Singh's new political party is finally launched. Could this usher in a new era for the push for Khalistan? And talking of Khalistan, we pay tribute to Baba Surat Singh Khalsa, who has passed away after his hunger strike and a lifetime of Khalistan campaigning. Well, all this and more in today's show. And joining me, as always, for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. Thanks again for all the amazing comments after the last show. Let's keep them rolling, and we'll keep reading them. Thanks.
Indeed, and James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, as usual, we'll be taking a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, which have been filling up below the video, so thank you, as always, for those. Right, James, let's get the show on the road. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
The question of whether or not it was an intentional snub at Modi, given the breakdown of U.S.-India relations. Of course, we know that there are still trade agreements that are being negotiated, but they seem to have slowed down given the President-elect Donald Trump's stance on tariffs and other international trade. Now, it appears that Trump has broken protocol and tradition with his inauguration in the fact that he has invited several world leaders, which is normally not the case for a U.S. inauguration. Generally, you would see people attending that are with Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the consulates and embassies, but you wouldn't see world leaders being invited. And that is where Trump has decided to break protocol slightly. However, with that said, there have been invitations sent out to China's president and presidents of other countries who some will attend, some will not. But very interestingly, left off of that invitation list was Narendra Modi. Now, it is very telling that, of course, we know that the U.S. is upset with the transnational repression and the foreign interference that has come out, not only in the Canadian investigations, but through their U.S. investigations as well. We know that the U.S. has called out India and linked them directly to being involved in the attempted assassination plot of the lead counsel for Sikhs for Justice, Mr. Panoon. But there have been other instances as well that are still under investigation, both in the U.S., in Canada, and potentially in the U.K., among other locations. Now, India seems to be downplaying this in the fact that they are really pushing the narrative that they will have their Minister of Foreign Affairs in attendance at the event. But again, that is typical for all inaugurations in the U.S. It is not something special. But the India government seems to be really pushing that narrative in order to downplay the fact that Narendra Modi was snubbed. Now, with that, of course, we know that there is also growing concern by the U.S. government and their foreign affairs and other departments with the lack of respect for human rights in India. And now that that information has become much more publicized over the last 2 years, of course, the U.S. is distancing themselves to some extent. Now, with that said, of course, we know that the relations between Canada and India have hit an all-time low. But at the same time, it is telling that the U.S. relations are going down as well. And this is really important because of the fact that there has been a transition from reliance on Chinese labor and Chinese manufacturing to transition a lot of U.S. companies to manufacturing and assembly in India instead. And that is because of the relations between China and India breaking down. And this seems to be spreading different directions, and it really could have an impact on the India economy. And with the potential tariffs coming in, it seems that India has been spared somewhat in the public domain. Trump has been screaming about tariffs on many countries, but he's been fairly quiet when it comes to India and those tariffs. but we do anticipate that he will be looking at that very seriously. And the information is coming out that with those, of course, the India government will be very angered by that and feel slighted. But at the same time, they are looking to develop their economy and to diversify the regions in which they serve. We've seen that as they not only work with the US, Canada, the UK to try and develop trade increases over the last decade. But of course, we've also seen them playing both sides of the field. With that said, of course, we know that others that were invited to the inauguration include the leaders of Italy, Hungary, Argentina, and El Salvador, who are all expected to avoid the event and have basically snubbed Trump in return after all of his rhetoric about the tariffs and potential involvement in Greenland and all of those things as well. So that's played a part of the international unrest. And it should also be noted that the NATO has taken over control of some of the weapon systems in regards to Ukraine out of concern about the new Trump administration as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. Some people who are expected to attend the Trump inauguration, of course, we said the External Affairs Minister from India, Jaishankar, as well as far-right politicians from the UK, Nigel Farage, and France's Eric Zemmour. Japan's Foreign Minister Takashi will be expected at the event, as well as the former president of Brazil, Bolsonaro. We'll follow the the inauguration as it happens Sunday, and we'll bring you reports on Monday as to the events as they happened and any highlights that we think are of interest to our viewers. And we really encourage you to share your thoughts on the inauguration through our comment section. So don't forget to keep us in the loop with your thoughts and your opinions in our comments, Angus.
Yes, I think this is quite an interesting play by Donald Trump. And Donald Trump doesn't do anything without deliberate, careful consideration. So I think it's, and he knows the media will be analysing this situation in minute detail, looking for signals, looking for what does it mean. And it's very actually, in reality, it's very hard to really work out what does it mean. Donald Trump is, as we often say, he's a businessman. He's not a politician, he's a businessman. So he basically, everything that he does carries a simple agenda that he is doing what he believes is best for the United States and, of course, best for his presidency and his administration. So by inviting China, which on the face of it, if you look at the optics of this, China has become, let's say, a sort of almost a de facto enemy of the West. It's sort of been built up as that, despite the ironic fact it is actually the manufacturing supplier for the Western world, if not the rest of the world. India sort of sits there in a slightly ambiguous position, and actually for many years has had this relatively ambiguous position. And as we often say, India likewise, certainly Modi, does exactly or makes decisions that are in the interests of India and India only. So he does play all sides against each other for India's interests. He will never pin his flag to anybody's mast, because he likes to switch around to different masts when it suits India. You can't blame him for that. So, as I say, in reality, what does this mean? I think Donald Trump is sending a signal out to both China and to both India. He's saying to China, look, yeah, we know you're a potential enemy. We know what's going on with Taiwan. We know you're about to make potentially a military play for Taiwan, which actually could kick off World War III. But at the same time, he's reaching out, I would say, an optical olive branch, a very visual signal saying, look, okay, let's, I will invite you, which means he's entertaining China to talk. So let's sit down around a table. Let's talk about this, because he knows he's already threatened massive tariffs, and China at the moment economically is struggling. It is suffering. It is actually hemorrhaging a lot of business to places like Vietnam and Southeast Asia, and indeed to India to some degree, less so since Modi's taken power. So China is in a slightly vulnerable position. China is actually open open, we believe, to more talks, let's say, with the US to help bolster its economic situation. Because, of course, Xi Jinping is sitting slightly vulnerable with the failing economy of China. And it's not often we say that in recent times, failing economy of China. So I think Donald Trump is recognising the vulnerability and weakness of China, and I think his extending this invitation is saying to China, OK, let's sit down and talk. Let's have this grown-up adult talk. And I think he knows that there's an awful lot he can win out of China, particularly with a view to Taiwan. So that's the China side. Not inviting Narendra Modi, I think, also sends out a very strong signal to Modi, or certainly to the BJP and the ruling elite of India. It's saying, look, OK, if you want to play that game of playing all sides, I can do the same. I'm not inviting you to this significant event, this symbolic event, rather, because I'm sending the signal to India saying, OK, I don't care that much about you. So that's the optics of it. It's basically saying, I don't care enough about you, India. Obviously, in light of all the context of transnational oppression, the interference in North American politics, etc., and of course, the abuse of human rights. Does Donald Trump care about abuse of human rights in India? I think, frankly, only if it affects his own administration and it affects his success. I think that's the only extent that he cares about it. But it's all about optics as well. But I think, as I say, I think this is a deliberate ploy and a play by Trump to send a signal to India saying, look, we don't care that much about you. And again, it's designed, I think, to make India say, OK, I think we need to try and repair our relationship with America. And I think it's almost inviting India to make a play for America, to come forward and say, OK, sorry, let's talk. So I think, again, it's a very deliberately designed ploy specifically for China in one way, as I've described, and for India in a very different way. It's saying, look, we don't care about you. And again, I think it's playing hard to get. Because India really needs America in reality. It needs American business, it needs America's market, it needs America's money, ironically, as well. It needs America's investment, despite the Modi agenda and policy of being isolationist. In reality, India needs foreign direct investment, whether it likes it or not, if it's really going to take on China as a future superpower. So I think that's what's going on there. And I think Donald Trump is a very practical, pragmatic man. He is all about the optics. He is all about sending out these dramatic signals, this great rhetoric that he comes out with. He's a bit like Gurpatwant Singh Khalsa in many ways. He is all about the drama and making the big gestures and making these outrageous claims on the face of it. But deep down, he's a very, very shrewd man, despite all his critics saying otherwise. He's a very clever guy. You don't get to be president of the United States and be as wealthy as he is, even despite a good hand up in life. You don't get to his position without having a few brain cells up there that are operating pretty well. So I would just correct one thing there, just on the political spectrum there, James. Far-right politicians from the UK, Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage, despite the media claiming he is a far-right politician, he is not. He is actually just right of centre. And this, unfortunately, is the problem with politics, particularly in the Western world at the moment, is that the left-wing media has followed this agenda whereby politics, certainly here in the UK, I can't speak so much for, well, in fact, I can speak to some degree for the US, moved a long way to the left with the woke agenda, as they call it, the DEI and all this. So politics moved very far left across much of, the Five Eyes nations, actually, as a whole. As a result of that, it recalibrated the definitions. So, in fact, politicians who are just right of centre are now being labelled as far right, because essentially they are so far right of the left wing that has moved so far left that it's been recalibrated so that right of centre is now being called far right, when it absolutely isn't far right. It is just right of centre. So Nigel Farage actually represents right of centre. He is not far right. We do have far right politicians, or very few of them, but we do have far right representatives. But Nigel Farage and the Reform Party actually, ironically, is not far right, as again the left-wing media are always very keen to perpetuate, because they fear the rise of the right wing, and that's right of centre, not far right. They fear the right wing, of which Donald Trump actually is also right of centre, but he likewise is not far right. And again, he has been labelled as far right, and it's the far left who actually are just as dangerous. And I say this regularly: the far left are just as dangerous as the far right. They are extremists on both sides of the political spectrum, and it's the far left are desperate to paint those who are right of centre as being far right because they fear the strength of the right of centre. That's where Donald Trump sits. That's where Nigel Farage sits. That's where many people across the Western world sit, right of centre, and it's the far left who are trying to paint them in the media as the far right. Many people fall into that trap, and it's damaging. I would say it's actually damaging common sense politics, because when you start labelling a mainstream right of centre or even a mainstream left of centre party as being far left or far right, then it's painting those parties wrongly, and it means people cannot then make valid, sensible judgments on who to vote for. So it's really smearing the political spectrum, and it's dangerous. And this is what we need to point out. Far left, far right are bad. It's as simple as that. So when we label politicians as far left or far right, we've got to be very careful that that definition is genuine, because of course fascism often enters the discussion. People label Donald Trump as a fascist. He's not a fascist. People label Nigel Farage as a fascist. He's not a fascist. But this has come from the far left. For those of you who understand the true definition of fascism, they are nothing to do with fascism. In fact, the far left are just as fascist as the far right fascists on the other end of the spectrum, etc., etc. Anyway, so that's a bit of a tangent to go down. But sorry about that, James. But yes, I think very interesting optics from the US. I think this will be interesting to see how this pans out over the next few years.
Absolutely, and it's just a matter of time. We'll watch and see what happens. But I think that in terms of this inauguration, I think it may be one of the largest or one of the biggest audiences to watch, whether it's streaming online or in traditional media. I think it's going to see record viewers, I think, at this point. So we'll see how it plays. But as we transition to the next story, Angus, we are looking at the United Sikhs and their response to helping those dealing with wildfires in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles County area. And we'll just play this story in its entirety here for the viewers that, we'll get some updates and see where things are at. As LA fires continue to rage, the LA Mayor, Karen Bass, has warned that we are not out of the woods yet. This comes after an LA Times report claiming that 1,100 firefighters were not positioned properly with the increase of winds overnight. This, however, should be very much placed in the column of misinformation. The first and foremost priority is the safety of civilians and firefighters. Let's take a look at one of the many organizations assisting the victims of the fires here. The United Sikhs have stepped forward with boots on the ground to help those in need. And after this video, we will talk further about other devastating impacts of the fire and ways that misinformation are not helping anybody in terms of victims, the firefighting efforts, and the firefighters themselves.
Lots of different things. Right now, the Palisades fire has been upgraded to over 21,000 acres, and the Eaton fire is just over, I believe, 16,000 acres, and is actually moving downwards into the city. And so more people are being displaced. They're being evacuated every single day. And most of these people have stories of their evacuations, or some of them literally have told us that their houses have burned down and they're just devastated and distraught, and there's a lot of upsetment here. And so we're doing what we can to help the community. All of our volunteers, we have many people today. And there is to turn around the size of this, you can see the scale, all the people, all the different stuff going on here. And this stuff is going, these donations are being taken as soon as they're being brought in. It's very high turnover, and it looks like a lot, but it's not that much when you consider how many tens of thousands of people are being affected by this. And they're only going to be here today and tomorrow, and we're going to be back tomorrow, of course. And it's been absolutely more popular, and that's always good. We're visible. We have so many different things. Any volunteers are welcome to join us and bring whatever you got. It does not matter. We will give it to people because people need it, and any support is greatly appreciated. ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸੰਗਤ ਜੀ, ਆਪ ਜੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੈਸਾਡੀਨਾ ਸਿਟੀ ਕਾਲਜ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਥੇ ਕੈਂਪ ਰਿਲੀਫ ਕੈਂਪ ਲਗਾਇਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ ਜੀ। ਯੂਨਾਈਟਿਡ ਸਿੱਖਸ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਵਾਈਲਡ ਫਾਇਰ ਰਿਲੀਫ ਕੈਂਪ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੇ ਸਹਿਯੋਗ ਨਾਲ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਜੀ। ਇੱਥੇ ਨੇੜੇ ਤੇੜੇ ਕਈ ਘਰ, ਹਜ਼ਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਗਿਣਤੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਘਰ ਜਲ ਕੇ ਰਾਖ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਨੇ। ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 2 ਲੱਖ ਸੰਗਤ, 2 ਲੱਖ ਬੰਦੇ ਡਿਸਪਲੇਸ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰੋਂ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਲੋੜਵੰਦਾਂ ਲਈ ਇੱਥੇ ਸੇਵਾ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ। ਆਪ ਜੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਸੰਗਤ ਦੂਰੋਂ ਦੂਰੋਂ ਆ ਕੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਜੁੜੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ।
The spread of misinformation, whether it's on social media or through mainstream media, is not helping anyone in terms of the fire response or what's going to take decades to recover from. The information coming from politicians, news agencies, and armchair pundits is a very big disservice to all of those who are risking their lives to save property, life, and the environment in the impacted areas. The Eden and Palisades fires are the most destructive and second most destructive wildfires, respectively, in Southern California history. The fires over the past week are larger and hotter than they would have been in a world without climate change and global warming. But at the same time, a lot of people are criticizing the way it has been handled. Many people do not understand the patterns or the devastation that these fires cause. When they bring in the extreme temperatures, they can create their own weather patterns. Winds, although the Santa Anas feed the flames, they can also shift at a moment's notice. And of that, it's got to be at the foremost front of the minds of those coordinating the fires, to ensure that firefighters are not put in immediate danger. Their jobs are risky enough, their lives are valued, and their efforts, as valiant as they are, should never be underestimated. The fires have been burning, and they have been destructive, and they have been unpredictable. For many people to go online and take away from the truth of the situation is not only disrespectful, but it just fuels more fires in the social media world and misinformation world. It's very important that you not share misinformation, but instead do your research. Understand how these fires cannot be underestimated, how these fires can have their own patterns, their own movements, and not only when the flames are burning, but afterwards, the dangers that they pose. Firefighters can go into areas where the fires have been extinguished, but let's not forget that underground, under the earth, many root systems of these trees have also been burned and turned to ash. This creates voids underground where, when firefighters or others step, could give way at any time. These not only pose a risk to injury from the fall, but there still could be fires smoldering underground that could cause further explosions or spread of the wildfire through that underground maze of root systems. The dangers are very, very evident. Lives have been lost. Over 12,000 buildings and structures have been lost. Small businesses and working class people are impacted. Many people look at the wildfires and state that they don't care because it is just rich celebrities. And this is not true. There are many celebrities who have been impacted directly by these fires who have lost everything. But it is also the working class people who have put their lifetime into building businesses, their blood, their sweat, their tears. And that should be remembered and be at the foremost thought of everyone. This is a fire unlike any other in the history of California and in most places of the world. And that makes it even harder for people to comprehend the damage, destruction, and patterns. The mayor of Los Angeles very valiantly stated that the buck stops with her. She backs the decisions by those that are coordinating all of the wildfire efforts. And for that, the peace of mind of all citizens of LA should know that there is a combined and cohesive effort to put the fires out. The time is not to lay blame. The time is not to question decisions made. There will be plenty of time to look back and reflect and make changes to the plans and to the responses for future wildfires. But the time right now is to deal with the fires at hand and to pray for those who are impacted by these devastating fires. Thanks for tuning in. Take care and stay safe. So yeah, as you can see, Angus, I mean, the devastation that's caused throughout the city is just phenomenal. But at the same time, there is such an outpouring of compassion and caring by a lot of different organizations. But in this story, we wanted to focus on the Sikh response because we know that they are always at the lead when it comes to disasters, whether it's in the US or anywhere in the world. I've personally had the pleasure and honor of working with them and meeting them, interviewing them and such on the front lines to help Ukraine. But yeah, we know that the Sikh community is so steadfast in their dedication to humanity. It can't be understated in any way, Angus.
Yes, I think looking at, I mean, it's very clear across the media and the pictures that are coming out of California, this fire is really something exceptional, very extraordinary. And of course, with extraordinary events come extraordinary things. And of course, the blame game has been so played out across the global media. It's pretty distasteful, really, and particularly because, of course, it involves management, it involves politicians, and of course, any time the spotlight falls on any politician for blame, they're all very, as a generalisation, they're all very slopey-shouldered, as we call it. They're always very quick to blame somebody else and shift the attention or focus to somebody else, and this is essentially what's going on. Everybody's trying to blame each other for this, but what's being lost amongst that blame game is actually the tragedy that it has unfolded on the ground. I mean, it's, as you say, some celebrities have lost multi-million-pound mansions. I mean, ultimately, it is very sad. They're still human beings at the end of the day. But it is the ordinary people who literally lost everything. That is so deeply tragic. What I do find really encouraging, of course, amongst these awful events, as always, there are these wonderful, warming stories of humanity. And of course, at the forefront, as always, once again, are the Sikh community doing their selfless service, their seva, and they are there at the vanguard of the providing help and resources and assistance to those who've suffered. And it just occurred to me as I watched that film, and we see this across just about every disaster that hits this planet, whether it's a flood, an earthquake, or a wildfire, wherever human tragedy occurs, the Sikh community are always there, almost without exception. They're there quietly working away, doing their selfless service. And it occurred to me, why doesn't the wider world know about this? I mean, I only realised this when I got involved with satellite TV and I started, researching the Sikh community and their activities. And it occurred to me, gosh, every single event they are there, dishing out resources, doing enormous humanitarian work. All with no fanfare, no publicity, almost no appreciation outside the community itself. Of course, those who receive the aid are appreciative, but in terms of the wider community, the global audience, there's no publicity and therefore there can be no appreciation. And I think it's deeply sad the Sikh community are not being acknowledged and indeed honoured for the work that they do out there. It is literally just quiet, selfless service that they're going on about. And they're not doing it for the publicity. They're not doing it for reputation. They're just doing it for their devotion to Sikhi, their devotion to God, and indeed their seva. That is what they do, and they go on about it without trying to court publicity and appreciation, which in itself, I think, speaks volumes. So I think it's beholden on people like us, James, to really get the word out there and highlight to a wider community just what good the Sikh community brings to humanity. And this is a perfect example of that. And I think it really is our mission to broadcast this wider.
Absolutely, Angus. And just a reminder that if you are looking to assist financially for the fire victims, you can go to unitedsikhs.org. You can make online donations there, but you can also find out if you're in the Pasadena College area, the Pasadena City College area, and want to drop off donations or items, check with the unitedsikhs.org, and you can find out what they're in need of, because they are giving out not only food and clothing, but also personal items like toiletries and, personal care, diapers, formula, stuff like that. So you can keep up to date as to what the current needs are.
Indeed. Okay, well, let's move on then, and let's move across to the Punjab, or the Panjab, depending on your preference. Politics of the Punjab has been pretty fragmented of late, and we've often reported, and certainly we've analysed the influence and infiltration of Punjabi politics by the RSS and Hindutva. And of course their agenda was to deliberately fragment and break up Punjabi politics with the goal of diluting the voice and destroying the voice of the Sikh community. And this has really changed things across the region over recent years. And of course, the traditional representatives of the Sikh community in the Punjab was the Shiromani Akali Dal. But with recent events and the recent, again, I'll use that word, fragmentation of the SAD, in the Lok Sabha elections last year, it left open a huge vacuum for people to step in and instead represent the Panth, represent the voice of the Sikh community, those people who felt wasn't being represented by the prevailing political parties, certainly in the form of the Shiromani Akali Dal. Up stepped Amritpal Singh, and he stepped up to the plate. And he was elected with a massive and unprecedented majority in his constituency, as indeed was the son of Beyant Singh, the gentleman who assassinated Indira Gandhi back in 1984. He stood up also, and he was elected for Faridkot, and he was elected again to the Lok Sabha, again with a massive, unprecedented majority. So they took advantage of the situation. And this has, of course, since evolved, because, of course, things haven't improved across the Punjab. Amritpal Singh, as we know, resides in Dibrugarh jail in Assam. And of course, the Sikh community have still not been able to be represented properly. So as a result, Amritpal Singh and his entourage and his team have, and likewise with Sarabjit Singh Khalsa, the son of Beyant Singh, they have united and said, look, we're both fighting the same cause. We're both fighting in alignment for Khalistan and to represent the Panth and Panthic issues. Why don't we unite? Let's join forces and create a new political party under which we can unite all the voices and all the issues of the Sikh community within the Punjab. And they have done such a thing. And as of the 14th of January, as we reported the other day, they officially launched their new party. This is 2 days ago. They launched at a location. They caused an official launch of a new party that they have named the Shiromani Akali Dal, in brackets, Waris Punjab Day. So again, it's playing on the existing Shiromani Akali Dal, but addending to that Amritpal Singh's own previous organisation, Waris Punjab Day, that he was leading before his detention. So the Shiromani Akali Dal, Waris Punjab Day, was announced by both Amritpal Singh and Faridkot MP Sarabjit Singh Khalsa. And it was announced actually on Tuesday, which was the occasion of the Maggie Mela in Muktsar. And the party itself, they did announce a lot more of the constitution and the structure of the party, certainly in its initial stages. It will be led by Amritpal himself, of course, from jail. And as many of the Indian reports that covered this, they all say, Amritpal Singh, that terrorist, is held under the NSA, the National Security Act, in central jail in Dibrugarh in Assam. They're very quick to point out that misinformation. And Amritpal's father, of course, he's been very vocal and very active in this campaign. He was there actually. Of course, Amritpal obviously couldn't be there in attendance himself, but his father Tarsim Singh was there, and he was part of this big announcement. And Tarsim attended this first political conference in Muktsar, but also present was Sarabjit Singh Khalsa, the MP for Faridkot, who was also elected alongside Amritpal Singh. And of course, Sarabjit, as I said, is the eldest son of Beant Singh, one of Indira Gandhi's assassins. And Tarsim said in his own words, "Let us come together to save Punjab and protect the Panth. We're forming this party for the creation of Sarbat de Bala de Raj. We want to do something for the people, thus creating a platform to fight for the issues of our society. Anyone can join the party and become a member simply by filling out the form. The state needs an Akali Dal to represent the Sikhs. The previous Akali Dal lost the trust of the people as their leaders had confessed their crimes before the Akali attacked, so they cannot face the people now. This Akali Dal has been formed and is a declaration..." I beg your pardon, let's cut off that, I'll have to come back to that. Basically saying it has been formed and has been set up to represent the voice of the Panth instead. And the party is established to address the pressing need for a new political force in Punjab, a necessity that has been strongly felt. At present, Punjab is grappling with severe crises. The public of the state, especially the youth, are facing challenges like drug addiction, unemployment, inadequate education, corruption, moral decline, both water and air pollution, lack of healthcare and other crises. Of course, these are issues that we talk about on a regular basis that are happening across the Punjab. Once Punjab thrived on the legacy of the Gurus, it is now plagued by divisions of caste, communal discord and discrimination, besides declining social and cultural values. In these challenging times, the Akali Dal Waris Punjab Day aims to create a transformative vision for Punjab. So a 5-member committee has been formed to run the party until a new president is elected. The members are Tarsim Singh, that's of course Amritpal's father, Sarabjit Khalsa, the son of Beant Singh, Amardeep Singh, Harbhajan Singh and Surjit Singh. It announced the formation of a panel to decide the party's constitution, its agenda, the policies and discipline. The panel will advise the executive committee on the organisational structure of the party and run its activities. A 7-member recruitment committee will also constitute itself to conduct a membership drive for the party. It was announced that the committee would conduct a membership drive in 3 months. Delegates would be elected by the members. This executive committee will also hold elections for the central committee within the next 3 months. The party president will be elected on April the 13th and establish the framework for the party. And the party said it plans to provide assistance to families of martyrs, farmers, labourers and working class individuals, and has promised support to Sikhs and others worldwide. So it's set out its stall very clearly. It's set out the initial structure of the party, how it will be formed, clearly based on fundamental democratic principles. It's set out its stall in terms of who it's representing and how it's going to help the people within the Punjab, particularly the Sikh community. And of course it is highlighting what issues it will stand on, and of course those issues that we have talked about on a regular basis. So where does this leave the existing Shiromani Akali Dal? Well, the SAD, as it's known, the Shiromani Akali Dal, has basically been fragmented, as I said earlier. It's been infiltrated by, well, it's been controlled by the Badal family, who, of course, we've given a profile on recently. And the Badal family have put in their own placeman. Their own president is essentially a placeman elected by, indirectly, the Badal family. And as a result, it has decreasingly represented the Panth. It's decreasingly represented the voice of the Sikh community. That's why it's hemorrhaged support. And Sukhbir Singh Badal himself, as we talked about recently, was admonished, and he was religiously punished and humiliated publicly. And as a result, he has since resigned from his presidency of the SAD. And so as a result, the party is actually breaking apart because there's been a bit of a breakaway. And the rebels, as they're now being labelled, the rebels of the SAD, saying, look, we need a course correction in a bid to revive this century. It's a century old, this party. And of course, its roots go back to way beyond partition. Its roots go back to the early part of the 20th century when it was essentially established to represent the Panth. So its roots were honourable. Its roots were based completely within Sikhi to represent the Panth. And it's since then, it's since the RSS got its claws into it, that it has become tainted, it's become infected, and it has no longer represented the Panth. And this is why it's now finding itself in this situation. And the Lok Sabha elections, in the last Lok Sabha elections, it only won 1 seat of 13 parliamentary constituencies. So that's how weak it's become. And the Badal family moved the party away from the basic fundamental issues which surrounded the Sikh Panth and deviated from its core ideology of giving voice to Sikh issues. That's why it's in this place. And the breakaway rebel SAD leaders are pretty unhappy with the party not adhering to the directions of the Akal Takht. Of course, that's the highest Sikh temporal seat. And as a result, they are talking about setting up a rival party. Yes, so even the SAD itself is breaking apart into new parties, rival parties. So what does this mean? It basically means all those voices are being diluted. The ultimate end goal is actually serving the RSS agenda. It is breaking apart Sikh politics. So this is why actually now it is a perfect time for Amrit Pal to set up his party. And because, of course, they're moving into this whole political domain, this vacuum where nobody now, no one party is representing the Panth, but now Amrit Pal Singh's new party, the SAD, Waris Punjab Day, is saying, look, we actually represent the highest Sikh temporal seat. We represent the ideology, the core ideology of Sikh issues. We will act under direction of the Akal Takht. So they will form, this new party will potentially form the focal point for the Sikh community. Now, that is fantastic news for many reasons. Not least, it's fantastic news for the Sikh community across the whole of the Punjab, because I've no doubt that this party will find representatives across all constituencies across the Punjab. And come the next elections, it's very likely then that this party will end up with a large number of MPs, which is fantastic for the Sikh community because it means their voice actually becomes a lot more powerful. It's also, more importantly, more important because, of course, Amrit Pal Singh and his entourage and all his supporters are pro-Khalistan. He has always stood on a Khalistan ticket. He won his Lok Sabha election in the last elections last year on a pro-Khalistan ticket, amongst many other issues, but he was absolutely publicly pro-Khalistan. That is why he and his colleague also got elected, because they both stood on pro-Khalistan tickets. And that means that I think we can imply, almost without even knowing it as a fact, it's very clear the Shiromani Akali Dal Waris Punjab Day is a pro-Khalistan party. If it then gets elected right across the Punjab, what does that mean? It means the move for a referendum in Punjab for Khalistan becomes almost undeniable. It is going to be very difficult for the central Indian government to deny the Punjab a referendum if the whole of the Punjab turns towards Waris Punjab Day, Shiromani Akali Dal Waris Punjab Day. So that is what we're facing in the future. That is a huge, major political stepping stone to getting a referendum in the Punjab. We're pretty confident that that referendum will succeed pro-Khalistan. So this, in terms of move towards Khalistan, is absolutely massive, James. I think we are seeing one of the first building blocks of Khalistan falling into place.
Absolutely. And let's not forget that, there were a lot of other messages and strategies that he had to not only work within the structures that are there to build and further enhance the movement for Khalistan, but also for the people of his region, including those that were dealing with the drug issues there. These are a lot of messages that I think that with this new party, they can really have more impact and really push forward the agendas that they had in mind when he was elected. And, hopefully they can put more pressure to get him out to be able to make things happen.
Indeed. So, and I think the very fact that Amritpal Singh resides in jail as an elected member of the Lok Sabha, he's established a new political party, that is going to become increasingly embarrassing for the Indian government, because the international attention is going to be increasingly focused on this, saying why is this growing party in the Punjab, is its leader in prison? And then Modi's going to find himself having to defend that situation, which is going to become increasingly difficult to do so. So we'll follow that story. I think this is an interesting one, James. Okay, in the interest of time, let's move on to a very serious and a very sad story. But I suppose it's good. It has a very positive spin to it as well. We're going to report, sadly, on the passing away of renowned activist Baba Surat Singh Khalsa. He was 91 years old. And this character is well known within the community. He's been a very active campaigner for many issues, particularly relating to Sikh issues. But most of all, he was a very powerful advocate for Khalistan. He passed away a couple of days ago. He'd been on a hunger strike, a long-term hunger strike, trying to raise awareness of all the Sikhs who remain in prison way beyond the ends of their sentences. He's a human rights activist, a Khalistan activist, but he'd been on hunger strike to highlight this outrage, this legal outrage in India, yes, another one, of many Bandi Sikhs, as they're known. These are Sikhs who are imprisoned and remain in detention beyond their actual sentences and have not been released. So he did this to demand the release of these Bandi Sikhs. And some of these have been incarcerated for over 30 years despite completing their sentences. Again, it's another legal outrage. Now, I'm not going to provide too much commentary on this. I think the tribute is best left to, I'll leave it to the Facebook page of Baba Surat Singh Khalsa, Sangharsh Jari Hai, which translates as the struggle continues. This is a Facebook page dedicated to Baba Surat Singh Khalsa. And they wrote a very moving tribute to summarise what he stood for and what actually happened to him. And again, I think it's up to our audience to make up your own minds and draw your own conclusions from this. And it basically read as follows. Baba Surat Singh Khalsa devoted his entire life to the nation after June 1984 and dedicated his life to fighting the Indian government. His final struggle was related to the release of Sikhs who were serving their lives in jail for decades. Before that, Gurbaksh Singh Khalsa had also dedicated his life to his community, but the Indian government still did not release these Sikhs. Baba Surat Singh started Bandi Singh Release Morcha with a hunger strike in January 2015. Within 2 months, the Morcha started attracting the support of Sikhs, and at the same time, the Indian state took Baba Surat Singh into illegal custody and forced him to Dayanand Hospital in Ludhiana, where he was inhumanely tortured, placing food on his nose and forehead. Don't forget he's on hunger strike here. The feed pipes were then attached with stitches to his face, and he was force-fed liquid food and high-strength steroids, and this was done to keep him alive. He was forced to lie in a bed locked in a room in hospital for nearly 8 years. Meanwhile, he was kept under the close watch of the Indian police, and without the prior approval of the police, nobody from the Sikh community could visit him. After 8 years, Jatadar Bhai Jagtar Singh Hawara of the Akal Takht, who was imprisoned in Delhi's Tihar jail, ended his hunger strike after writing the orders. He ended his hunger strike after receiving orders from the Jatadar. Despite this, the tyrant government did not release him from hospital and he remained detained under police custody. The government wanted to severely punish him for protesting the release of the detained Sikhs, and the government thus succeeded. He was eventually released in 2023 with the intervention of Sikh organisations, but to exacerbate the state cruelty, he was then detained at home in his native village, Hasanpur, even after being released. He was detained like this for another 1.5 years. Baba Surat Singh's struggle to release detained Sikhs continued. In June 2024, he came to America with his family, but of course it was too late by then. He couldn't digest any normal form of food. The government had forced so much steroids into his body to keep him alive through the doctors, which were now starting to have deadly effects on his body. Of course, don't forget he's in his 90s now. His health declined day by day, and despite this, he continued to join Khalistan's Jado Jihad. Eventually, his body gave way, but in his eyes, the freedom of his nation was always shining. His dream was that he would die and be reborn and continue to fight until Khalistan's independence in the national struggle. Throughout his struggle, Baba Surat Singh Khalsa's body had, of course, been deeply injured through torture by police and the steroids administered by the doctors. But he was a Sikh warrior in his heart and in his mind, and he always remained in high spirits. At the end, this warrior was determined to leave this world fighting. Coming to America, he realised that the imprisoned Sikhs would never be released until Khalistan was liberated. So he declared Khalistan Zindabad in a loud voice. He declared that there are Sikh slaves in India and the Indian state will never release Sikh detainees without negotiation. While he himself believed that hunger strike couldn't be part of the Sikh spirit and Jahu Jahal, he also maintained that whatever he could do in view of his age and resources, he would do in the best way that he was able. I can only do this. The essence of Baba Surat Singh Khalsa's 10-year-long struggle is that he alone defeated the puppet government of the Indian state and Punjab's Badal, Amrinder and Bhagwat Man with his struggle. He showed that the time for peaceful struggle has ended. It is an inspiration. The nation will always remember him for taking part in the wars that he fought in different ways for Khalistan's independence. Future generations of Sikhs will continue to draw inspiration from his ideological approach. Akal Purakh Baba Surat Singh Ji's struggle must be forever recorded. And I'll leave it at that, James, a very fitting tribute.
Absolutely, and I know that he'll definitely be there with us in spirit when we get to Khalistan and enjoy our first meal on Khalistani ground. He'll be there in spirit, Angus.
Indeed, and I'll thank the Baba Surat Singh Khalsa Sangharsh Jari Hai Facebook page for that tribute. Okay, James, on that note, let's now move on to our comments column. And we'll start off with Hatby, who says, and again, we're talking about Diljit Dosanjh, back to this topic and this film, Punjab 95, that was about to be released in February. RSS control Bollywood, and I think this is the case. You're absolutely right. And this will only be released if it glorifies India. Diljit is being used as a puppet by the Indian government to save his life. Yeah, I think we can speculate at great length about this, and I think you're absolutely right saying that it's very clear RSS control Bollywood. But the important point here, I think, comes from Satan Boy, who, with his response to this. He says, look, the tipping point of RSS BJP is near. It's the end of Hindutva. Now, this is quite an interesting comment. And I put this one up because I think there will come a tipping point. I think we are starting to see this, where the power of the RSS and the Hindutva ideology, it will reach this point where momentum will shift against it. The momentum has been very much pro-RSS, pro-Hindutva. The vast, overwhelming Hindu majority population of India have been basically hoodwinked. They've been indoctrinated by the Gaudiya media into supporting this ideology without really understanding the true nature of it, without really understanding where it's taking India. But I think more and more people are waking up amongst the Hindu population. I think they're saying, hang on a second, we thought we were a democratic nation. We thought we followed the rule of law, and yet more and more evidence is actually leaking out. Obviously not through the Indian media, but across international media. And thank heavens for the internet, James, because it's people like us that are increasingly being watched. Despite us being banned in India, more and more people in India are looking to the Western media to get the truth, to find out what really is going on. And I think more and more people are realising this. And as Satan Boy points out here, I think we are approaching this tipping point where the RSS BJP are being found out for exactly what they are.
Absolutely, Angus, and that's one of the concerns with the potential shutdown of TikTok coming up this weekend in the United States. I mean, I've put out videos that have educated people on Khalistan and Khalistan issues. The top videos had just under 100,000 views, but combined the videos have over 500,000 views. So it's an essential part to utilize social media to get the word out. It's definitely working, and we'll just have to keep pushing along with our show, and everybody out there just has to keep pushing along with all different platforms.
Indeed, and a message to our audience, thank you for your support, but also get out there and actually actively get more people to watch us, get the word out, watch more media like us. Actually, Kandar, and this didn't reach Critics' Corner, actually quite often appears in Critics' Corner, but actually it's not fair to do that, because actually Ashley does contribute an awful lot of very sensible, maybe counter-narrative comments, but it's certainly always backed up by an interesting line of argument. And Ashley says this time, how is India interfering? Canadians are interfering in India, especially Punjab. Are they really? I don't know. That's an interesting perception. Are Canadians interfering in Punjab, James? I wouldn't say the Canadian government is. I think really maybe the Canadian diaspora is, and I think they have a right to do that because essentially their families are in the Punjab. But I don't think Canada as a nation is, James.
No, I think they're off point on that. But again, we all have our opinions, and we appreciate them being shared here. But no, I definitely don't think Canada as a whole is interfering at all. So.
And then actually turns slightly mischievous by saying, judging by the persons that Canada has elected in the past, it may not be a bad idea to get a little external help. You'll get it from the USA in any case. I think slightly tongue-in-cheek there, James.
I think so, and that's all the fun of the jabs back and forth. Sometimes it's very entertaining to watch how these comments play out and the responses. So,
indeed. So thank you for your contribution once again, Ashley. Right, this next comment, this is a fantastic comment from Amar Khaira. A really, really good comment. Thank you for this sort of comment that we love on this show. Very informative, very educational. Amar Khaira says the name of Diljit's movie was actually changed to Punjab 95. The original name was Galugara, forgive my pronunciation. The RSS must have felt so ashamed to let them release it in this name. Galagara means large-scale massacre or genocide or a holocaust. Of course, the Hindutva like to refer to what happened in 1984 as riots. They really hate this reference to the word genocide or Galugara. Also, the sound and pronunciation of the word Galagara gives Amar Khaira chills. Now, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I hope I have. Please do correct me if I got it wrong. Galugara. But Amar Khaira continues. Once filmmakers have made their money out of the Punjab 95, they should actually release it in its original form under its original name of Galagara and spread the word around the world. I think this is a great idea. I don't know how practically possible that is, but why not? Make your money with the official release, but why not unofficially release it? And as you rightly point out, any film that's banned, immediately people want to go and watch it. So if this film is released in its original form, its uncut form, under its name of Galagara, it could reach an enormous global audience and then get out that message of what really needs to be portrayed to the world's audience. And you go on to continue to say that when the Gaudiya media mentioned Diljit's film as they have been doing, it's because they think their secret weapon to praise Rangana Ranaut's movie, Emergency, of course, where Rangana Ranaut played Indira Gandhi. Of course, it was a very sanitised, almost rewriting history version of Indira Gandhi and how wonderful Indira Gandhi was. And again, it just brushes over her evil involvement in 1984 in Operation Blue Star. And of course, it doesn't mention Operation Shanti. If you want to know what that is, do Google it. It's a shock, and I've done podcasts about it. And that's the reason that she was assassinated. Of course, the film Emergency doesn't cover any of that. Surprise, surprise. And of course, likewise, as Amar Khaira points out, they basically moulded Diljit Dosanjh into their version of a Sikh, and he, of course, has gone along with that. And as you rightly say, I think he knows what the truth is. Diljit knows what the truth is, but he's playing along because it's his career, it's his money. You can't blame him for that. Well, I suppose, yes, you can. We talked about his principles. That's a whole other argument. But I think this is interesting. As you rightly say, he doesn't want to end up like Sidhu Musiwala, of course, dead, and of course, like Deep Sidhu and others who have publicly stood up for Khalistan and tried to highlight the evils of the genocide of 1984, and of course the extrajudicial killings, etc. in the 80s and 90s. If you do that, you end up dead or you end up in prison, as has often been the case. So as you rightly say, maybe Diljit Dosanjh thought, look, you know what, I may as well just make a career out of this and not end up in jail or end up dead. But and then the final comment here, I think the only masterpiece of a movie showing the real struggle was Sardar Udham Singh, because the bad guys in this movie were, of course, the British, not the Sikhs or the Indians. And I don't know that film. Maybe we'll have to look that one up, James. And I think it's very easy for India to paint the British as the enemy, because of course India can unite in that. I certainly hope the Sikh community doesn't do that. Well, I think actually they've every justification to do that. But I would then caveat with saying, look, don't blame us now, modern Britain, because many of us in modern Britain will stand for Khalistan, when we certainly stand for the Sikh community. But yeah, that's a film we must look out for, James. Sardar Udham Singh. Amakara, thank you very much for that comment. It's an extremely informative and an interesting comment for covering a lot of areas that really, I think, opens up a lot of issues there, James.
Absolutely. And something to keep in mind as well is with the development of any film or entertainment industry entity, we know that it takes time to build up the audiences and build up that credibility in the Western world. So I think that this is going to go a long way to develop further productions in this realm to educate people. And as they grow an audience outside of India in the Western world, they'll be able to push the envelope even further and further to get the truth out there and to make sure that people know the accurate story of what happened with the genocide and other important points of history going back to 1947 and even earlier about the Sikh Empire. So I think that this is a very important turning point for Bollywood media, and especially when it comes to the Sikh history and stories.
Indeed, and we all know the power of the media to influence people. People form their opinions based on what they watch and hear or read. Yeah. And of course, films form an enormous part of that. And there's no way that any film made in India is going to portray what actually happened in the Punjab over those years. Truthfully, there's no way the truth will ever come out in anything produced in India whilst the government remain in power as they are. It's got to come from outside India. And we all know when we watch a film how motivated, we watch a really powerful film, how motivated and influenced we become by the story, the narrative that's portrayed in that. We can all think of films that we've watched thinking, yeah, God, you want to stand up and shout and get angry about something. That's the power these films have. And of course, if it portrays a false narrative, as the Godi media does, then of course people are going to be influenced like that. But if somebody can produce a genuine film, and sadly it will have to be outside India, do you think the motivational power that will have, the influence that will have on both the global audience, but of course a potential domestic audience in India, if this film can be somehow distributed on the black market, let's say, or across the internet, and the Indian audience get to see it, you imagine the power of that across India. Yeah, it's something that we must always support because of the influence it can have. Right, and then TC8410 says, yes, whoever controls the media controls the narrative. Yeah, I think this really does sum everything up, and I think sums up what we've been saying, Jez. I think whoever does control the media and who controls films like Punjab 95 does control that narrative. The message must be driven home to all. The content will usually reveal this, but of course he refers then to your petition, James, and the people of Canada must need transparency before they commit to any one politician. Transparency is absolutely vital, and I think, James, your petition must be pushed and must go viral.
Yeah, and I've seen it growing. I've seen some signatures being added today, and of course we'll keep an eye on that and see how it moves. We know that the report is due out on January the 31st, but again, whether or not that'll get to the public eye anytime soon with the shutdown of government, we'll have to wait and see.
Indeed. So if you're a Canadian citizen, please don't just sign it. Get your family members to do it. Get your friends to do it. Tell as many people as you can to sign that petition because, of course, the impact is very significant. It's important that you understand what is going on behind those scenes in your politics in Canada. And the final comment comes to Kamal Jet Try, who says, I got so much information from your show about the Sikh movement about Khalistan. I am Sikh myself, but I wasn't aware of all the information. Thank you for us doing a great job. Well, this actually is quite interesting, James, because I think we almost take it for granted that all our audience must be fully aware of all the issues that we talk about because they are in the Sikh community. But actually, in reality, a lot of people aren't aware of many of these issues because, and I'll give an example of this. I had a delivery some time ago, and the two guys who made this delivery, it was a piece of electrical equipment, they were both Sikhs, and they turned up wearing their turbans. And I said, hey guys, and I introduced myself, and I said, what are your thoughts on Khalistan? And they went, I don't know, never really think about it. Because, in their day-to-day lives, in their lives in the Midlands here in the UK, it never really enters the equation. It never enters their lives. And likewise, a lot of issues that happen in the Punjab doesn't really affect them directly. So they're more interested in just keep putting food on their plates and keeping a roof over their heads. And that, I think, is the case for many of our audience, James. And I think we do take it for granted that everybody in our audience knows everything about, and we're the ignorant ones. We're almost trying to sort of preach to those who already know these things. But actually, that is not not the case. And I think it's very interesting from Kamaljeet Rai, who makes this comment. Thank you for your comment, because actually it does make us realise actually there are those of us, sort of those of you in the community who don't, of course you don't know everything, but might not be aware of many of the issues that we do raise. So it is actually quite comforting and warming to know the fact, James, that we are actually contributing to the community. We are contributing to the flow of truth, the flow of information, and actually informing and helping our audience and those of you out there in the community to know what is actually going on out there. I think that's very encouraging, James.
Absolutely. And we need to also extend a very heartfelt thank you to the community for allowing us the honor and privilege of being a conduit to that information for not only the Sikh community that may not know about it, but for all communities. And for us to learn and for you to correct us on when we're wrong or just to share information with us, we are honored to be a part of it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think the lesson there, certainly that I've learned is when we talk about Khalistan. Of course, I think most people in the Sikh community will be aware of the concept of Khalistan, and but they don't understand. Well, why does it matter? And I think our job, James, is to make them understand, is make people in the community understand why it is so important for the Sikh community globally, not just in the Punjab, but globally. Why it is so significant, why it matters, why it is so important for democracy globally, but almost why it's so important for the core of Sikhi itself, for the very heartland of where Sikhi was established. This is why it is so important, and we need, I think, to inform and educate people in the community why you really do need to get behind this movement for a homeland. You don't necessarily have to live there, but it's important for the community as a whole, and it's important, most importantly, for the Sikh religion and the continuance and the health, the good health, and the moving forward of the Sikh religion. I think that is why Khalistan is so important. So I think we will continue on that vein and hope we can recruit more and more people from both within and outside the community to support that very concept of Khalistan. But on that note, we must draw things to a close once again for another day. But thank you so much for watching Perspectives. Thank you so much for all your comments. Do please keep them coming in. Thank you for comments, and particularly like that long comment we got. Great comments like that educate me and James on so many of the issues that we might not be aware of, or certainly nuances of the issues that we don't understand, not being Sikhs ourselves. So please do keep those comments coming in. And don't forget you can message us directly at message@satlodgetv.com if there's anything you'd like to talk to us directly about. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. As always, it is a goodbye from me, and it's a goodbye from James.
Stay safe.
That you've been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.